Why are DJs finding their DJ gear doesn't work anymore when they update their computer software? Talking of computers, which one's best if you want a great laptop for DJing with? And when you've got music on that laptop, how do you, learn to love it in the same way that you loved vinyl or CDs back in the analog days? We've got tips, tricks, and answers to all of these questions in this edition of the Inside Track DJ School podcast from your friends here at Digital DJ Tips. As ever, recorded in front of an audience of our students. So thank you so much to everyone who took part. Let's get going with this show. So our first topic today is how not to get caught out by software updates as a DJ. So let me give you some context here. Recently, Windows changed the way they handle MIDI. Now, MIDI is the language that's used to talk to musical instruments, and in musical instruments we mean, in this case, DJ controllers. So the controls, the parts that you use when you're DJing are actually just communicating with the computer. The software is doing all the work. And if there's a problem with that link, well, then you're going to have a problem DJing. And that's exactly what happened to Windows users when they took a Windows update into their machines. Suddenly their controls stopped working. Now, there were a whole range of severities here. Some people kind of got away with it. Other people's, it was a complete game changer. And depending on the brand of software, of hardware you were running and software, the fixes came slower or faster. And so Virtual DJ put a little tick box in their software that kind of fixed it, which actually worked for anyone's software. So you could get Virtual DJ on your computer, tick this box, and then suddenly your Serato would start working again and stuff. So it was a crazy few weeks. It's kind of sorting itself out now, but there are lessons to be learned. So MIDI is a strange one. That's normally fine. The one that normally catches people out is Mac users when there's a new Mac OS, because the audio needs to be checked in all software and with hardware, and it sometimes, quite often, isn't ready at the time that the new OS launches. And so you get a flurry of everyone from Ableton to Serato to Rekordbox and so on saying, do not, whatever you do, don't update to the latest OS. We'll tell you when it's fine to do so. I mean, that's quite common. So common, in fact, that my friend Mojax has a video that he shares every time it happens. But also, there is the kind of longer term creep, if you like, where your hardware stays the same, but the software creeps forward. And in the end, software stops supporting older hardware. And that can be extremely frustrating for DJs, because ultimately a DJ setup is like like a guitar or something. You know, you pick it up and you play it. You don't expect it to suddenly not work just because one of its components has changed. And so this is something that caught out people when they bought the very first Rain boxes to use with Serato, which are now many years old, but they all worked fine and they were DJing fine on their turntables and so on. But guess what? As soon as Serato moved up to a recent update, then the old Rain boxes didn't work, and people were, you can guess, quite rightfully upset. Also, it's happened with Rekordbox and certain controllers that don't work anymore with Rekordbox. Rekordbox really confounded it by making people pay in order for their gear to keep working. And if you didn't pay, it wouldn't, which is really bad, but that's another story. So anyway, the whole thing here is software updates necessary. They keep you secure. Times move on, but they can be very bad for DJs. So what are you meant to do? Well, that's what we're going to talk about now. So the first thing is, and I have to say this because you don't take this as read, you really must understand the very basics of computers if you want to DJ with one. Now, if you're just using any old computer to prepare your music, pop it on a USB and go and play on DJ gear without a laptop in the DJ booth with you, you're kind of insulating yourself from most things. But if you're using it to DJ with a DJ controller and the computer then becomes part of this, I've just called it a guitar, right? A musical instrument. The computer is now part of your instrument. You really must understand the very basics of how computers work, how operating systems work, how files and folders work, but how software and drivers work as well. You must take time to get the help you need, to ask, we're here to ask with things like this. That's what we do. We're a DJ school, but to look at the manuals and to make sure you understand what you're doing and you're not just blindly clicking, yeah, come on, I want to get back to my DJing. It's really, really important, because if you don't understand what's going on, you're not going to have any clue when it goes wrong. So basic understanding is important. Understand what you're doing. Now, the biggest single piece of advice, and the only piece of advice I would give to anyone in all circumstances, is this: disable auto updates. Auto updates are very, very much not your friend. You do not want your computer deciding when it's going to do something that could break your DJ. So disabling auto updates is the single biggest thing that you can do to make sure you don't get caught out. Now, of course, you're going to have to update at some point. I said that it's important to keep your computer up to date for security, for features, and so on, and to keep the hardware and software in sync and all of these things. Updates are not an enemy, but updates happening when you don't want them to are potentially a game ender. So disable auto updates in your Windows or Mac software. You choose when you update. And then following on from that, never update just before a gig. Joey at Digital DJ Tips wrote an article and made a video several years ago now about a true life story where he turned up at a gig and he opened his laptop, plugged it in, and he booted up and it said, update will be finished in 2 hours. Internet, right? Internet is not fast in clubs, so it was taking its time to download an update and he had to play in 10 minutes. So look, don't be that person. Don't update before a gig. Don't have auto updates switched on. If you are going to update your software, don't do it the day before and find it breaks and then you've only got 24 hours to sort it out. And certainly don't let it auto update when you get to a gig. All right, so the next one is really common sense, but you'll be surprised how many people don't follow it. Make sure you're on the mailing lists for the companies that produce the software you use and that make the hardware you use. When you buy DJ equipment or when you register with DJ software, you will be given the option to join their lists. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not join lists for things that aren't important. I hate getting emailed all the time. I haven't got enough time to deal with it all. But this is one instance where it's definitely worth doing so because they can keep you up to date with the latest on their software and their hardware when it comes to updates and tell you when to do these updates or when it's safe to anyway. So talking about when it's safe to, I have another rule that I personally follow, which is a very simple one. When it comes to the laptop you DJ on, be super ultra conservative with when you actually do the updates. So what I mean here is do not be a guinea pig. Do not be the first person to discover something that isn't working how it should. Yes, they have all the testing before they go to production and before they go out there in public. But look, the first people who download it are the ones who find all the things that go wrong that are then quickly followed up with a week later in the 0.01 version of that software, right? Don't be that person. I leave it until they've announced and launched to the developers the next version of the software. So if it's an operating system, I'll wait for the next one to be launched. So for instance, Mac OS 28, which is coming in September, I won't update my Mac to 27 until that's actually arriving because it's just easier to stick with the one where someone else has had all the problems. So if you follow all these things, if you just have basic understanding of what software and drivers you've got and how they work, if you've disabled auto updates, and when you do update it, you're ultra conservative and you certainly don't do it just before a gig, and you make sure you stay informed by staying on the software and hardware mailing list, then you're going to be all right. And also here inside Student Hub, we're recording this with our students here at Digital DJ Tips. If you're listening to this in public, then of course we have a community here that is sharing this stuff all the time and that can help you if you do get stuck or advise you when the right time to do these things is. Our next topic today is staying with computers. Don't worry, all three. Well, actually, all three kind of are, but hey, we are a digital DJ platform. But this one is squarely about computers because our next topic today is how to choose a DJ laptop in 2026. This has been a buzzing topic in the community over the last couple of weeks, over the last month or so. And the reason for that is really simple. It's because Apple has released the new MacBook Neo and people have been looking at this fantastic, well-priced laptop and saying that looks brilliant. I can even color code it with my gear. Can I just buy a Neo and forget this whole question of what laptop to DJ with entirely? So that is the trigger for us taking another look at this topic, and we've been doing some training inside our platforms on it this last month. So I'm going to share it with you now here. So when it comes to choosing a laptop, again, as I said in the previous piece, if you're just using a laptop to prepare your music to DJ with away from a laptop, you can use anything. We're talking about the part that actually becomes part of your musical instrument, the thing you play. Your controller plus your laptop is your guitar. It's a DJ's drum kit. It's a DJ's keyboard, right? It's your instrument, right? So now it's important. And so as long as you're DJing with that thing with you, then what we're about to talk about makes a lot of sense and you should listen to it. And is the MacBook Neo any good? Well, we'll get back to that at the end. So we need to consider not only the specifications of the machine, but some physical aspects as well. This is crucial because you're not DJing sat at home in perfect lighting conditions in a situation where the atmosphere is controlled, right? It's not really hot and sweaty, and it's not really cold. There's no sunshine beating down on you. There's not people spilling drinks on you. You know, you're not having to squint at a screen that you can't see properly, and all this stuff. You are out in a situation where all those things are happening. So for instance, at home, my home laptop is a really, really cheap Lenovo laptop with a really rubbish screen. It's a bendy plastic thing, but guess what? It's fine because all I'm doing on it is writing reports and doing all the boring stuff that you just need a word processor for and a web browser. So look, I don't put any money or time or effort into making that something where my resources go. My DJ laptop is a completely different thing because it has to be bang on, right? So it's important to have some of the physical stuff right as well. Let's talk through the hardware first though. Let's talk about the specifications. So we're going to go quickly through these things. You're going to want 16 gigabytes of memory. This is becoming standard anyway, but also DJ software has become more demanding on systems recently. It was always pretty undemanding, right? You could run it on any old thing. But since the arrival of real-time stems, you do need a decent amount of memory for the processor to play with in order to keep that snappy. And so DJ software has become more demanding again, and therefore a decent amount of memory is part of the formula you need to have a laptop that works well. Another part of the formula is the processor. So it's easy if you're using a Mac. Any of the new Mac M processors from the M1 upwards are going to work fine. But if you're using a Windows computer, I must confess, Windows is not my area of expertise. The advice which has always worked for us is anything that has been made in the last 3 years and isn't bargain basement is likely to have a processor in it that's good enough for you. But if any students here on our live recording want to share their thoughts on processors for Windows computers, do so, and I'll try and slip them in before the end of the show. Now, the other thing that you're going to need is a hard drive built in. Now, nowadays, you definitely want to go for a solid state hard drive, an SSD device, because the moving parts in a hard drive are not conducive to reliability in a laptop that's going to be used for DJing out and about. That said, SSDs are also fallible. Don't think that just because it's an SSD, it'll never fail, but SSDs are far more reliable. The downside of them is that they're much more expensive. And so if you wanted, say, a 512 gigabyte or a 1 terabyte gigabyte SSD, it's going to cost you a lot more than an equivalent with the old style hard drives. That said, you should definitely go down that route. You know, for a lean, mean, casual DJ library, and we're going to talk about DJ libraries in a minute, 512 gigabytes, yeah, it's probably pushing it a bit. Certainly 1 terabyte should be fine. But if you're a mobile DJ, if you're an event DJ, if you have to carry around a lot of request tracks that you don't play very often, but you do need them, 2 to 4 terabytes is going to be enough. And that will cost you an awful lot more than a half terabyte or a 1 terabyte drive, but still go for SSD. So that's the internals, if you like, of the computer. Now let's talk about the stuff that you can see and the stuff that is a physical part of the device. So the first thing is the number of ports that you have. So it doesn't really matter if they're old style USB-A or new style USB-C. It doesn't really matter how fast they are because DJ gear doesn't really need that stuff. But it is important that you have enough. So let's say you've got a really stripped down computer that's only got 2 USB ports, right? And no power socket. So you've got to use one of those for a USB power device. Now you've got 1 port left. Now, if you're plugging in a DJ controller, you're good. There you go. You've got no ports left, but your DJ controller's plugged in. Now, what if you want to add a hard drive? What if you decided you want to keep all your music on an external hard drive? There's no ports to do it with. And now you're going to need to buy a USB hub, probably a powered one. And now you've got cables and you've got extra stuff, extra points of failure. All because you didn't buy a computer with a 3rd USB port on it or a computer with 2 USB ports and a power socket as well. So make sure you've got enough ports for what you need. If you think you're ever going to want to add extra equipment, you might want to add a MIDI effects unit or an extra MIDI pad unit, or you might want to expand and use DVS, or there's all kinds of reasons why you might want more ports. Make sure you've got enough for what you need. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is your screen, because screens are not exactly how you might imagine when it comes to DJing. Let me explain what I mean. So firstly, you need to be able to see your screen. DJ software is really busy and you are going to need to watch what you're doing on it. It's a lot easier to search for music by looking on the big screen on your laptop, even if your DJ unit's got a small screen on it, right? You can see many, many more tracks as you're searching and that kind of thing. You are going to want to look at your screen. So the bigger the better in my view. Now 13 inches is the minimum and that's okay. Some people are happy with that and they like a smaller computer. For me, 15 is the sweet spot. 17 is great, but they're getting a bit big then. For me, a 15-inch screen is the sweet spot. But you're going to also want to make sure it's bright, because my laptop at home, my Lenovo that cost me like 400 UK pounds, that's pretty dodgy even at home. But as soon as I take it outside into daylight, you can't see a thing, right? You're going to want to make sure you've got a really nice bright screen, because if you're playing outdoors and you're playing in daytime or in sunlight, you ain't going to see a thing on a screen that isn't bright. And the thing that might surprise you about screens is resolution. Now, generally with computer screens, people say, oh, the bigger the resolution, the better. But I actually don't subscribe to that, because I think that if you've got a big enough screen that you're comfortable with anyway, then the resolution out of the box is going to be fine for DJ software. And most of the time, if you're going to do anything, you're going to push the resolution so that there's fewer pixels on the screen, not more. In other words, you're going to go into the system settings and you're going to say, set it as if I had a smaller display. And then because your display isn't smaller, everything will get a bit bigger. And suddenly you can read the tracks properly in your DJ library. And suddenly your DJ software expands into the space it's got and breathes. Because DJ software is really, really complicated. And DJ software has loads of stuff squeezed in. And unless you're looking at it on a big screen, for most people, it's just too squashed and too difficult to see. You know, having the ergonomics right, having a nice computer stand and having your computer screen near your face, albeit off to one side, so it's not between you and your crowd, is also a good idea. But ultimately, having the resolution set a little bit smaller is often much more comfortable. I know a lot of DJs who do that. I don't know any DJs who set it the other way, right? So they're squeezing more DJ software into their screen, because it just becomes ridiculous. So resolution is not quite so important. Brightness and a size that suits you, I think, probably is. And your keyboard is another point where you might get something wrong by mistake here. If you buy a computer with a keyboard that hasn't got backlighting. Now, you can always get one of those bendy lights. Hey, if you've got an extra USB port, you can get bendy lights that plug into your USB port and bend round and light your keyboard. But wouldn't it be better just to have it lit from underneath, so you don't need that? I think having a lit keyboard is really important. So a backlight on that keyboard will cost you a little bit more. Now, all these things we've been talking about, right? Decent amount of memory, a reasonable size SSD, a good processor, having enough ports, having a decent screen that's nice and bright, and having a backlit keyboard, they all cost money. And so the next mistake, or the mistake people make at this point when they haven't made any mistakes so far in choosing a laptop, is that they now think, oh, I'm just going to get any old computer that's got those specifications, right? And the problem there is, well, we've already touched on it, that any old computer that's made of really cheap bendy plastic and that isn't durable and that isn't going to stand the knocks and scrapes and splashes that might happen, is just not going to last the course when you're DJing with it in a hot club. It's sweaty, it's humid, then you fold it up and you throw it in the back of your car and you drive home in the cold and condensation appears. It's just not going to last. So buying a computer that is built well is really important. Before we get on to the new MacBook Neo then, let's just talk about Mac versus Windows, and I can keep this really short. It doesn't make a blind bit of difference. They've both got pluses, they've both got minuses, they both have their moments where they're not covering themselves in glory. A lot of people use a Mac because they're just built reasonably well, they're reasonably reliable. You will always pay more for a Mac than you will for the equivalent Windows machine. And so go with the one you're most comfortable with. Now, I just said you'll always pay more for a Mac than you will for a equivalent Windows machine. But Apple kind of blew that apple cart apart, didn't they? When they, if you pardon the pun, when they launched the Apple MacBook Neo. Because here was a really bargain basement laptop that seems to be built from a solid piece of metal in a decent chassis. And that might well just do the job. You know, the screen's going to be nice. You know, the keyboard's going to be nice. So what boxes does and doesn't it tick? Well, the one you might think would be a game ender is that it's only 8 gigabytes. And we've already said 16 gigabytes is the minimum you need. But Mixmaster G, who's here with us, as he often is on the live recording of this podcast, would be able to tell you, had you been following him on his fantastic YouTube channel, that actually an 8 gigabyte, which is the only one you can get, by the way, Neo can handle the DJ software that's meant to need 16. So actually, buyer beware, of course. It seems like this isn't really the deal breaker it could have been. And it's all down to the way the Mac is architected inside, the way it interfaces between the memory and the hard drive and the processor. Apparently, it's all over my head, that stuff. But it works. That's the important thing. Now, the SSD, I'm not sure what sizes you get, but as ever, if you can't get a big enough SSD fitted in one thing you can say about this machine is there ain't no upgrading the internal parts, right? So an SSD is going to need to be built in because the next problem is going to mean you can't have an external one. So make sure it's got enough disk space for the amount of music you want to put on it. So what is the next problem? It's the number of ports. There are only 2 ports, 2 USB-C ports on a MacBook Neo, and one of those has to be used for power. Unlike a MacBook Air, it doesn't have that nice little magnetic power socket on it that the MacBook Air reintroduced recently because people loved it. So you're going to have to use one of those for power, and now you've only got one USB. No problem at all if you're just plugging in a controller, but anything else, you're just not going to have enough. So it is a bit of a deal breaker, that for certain. Only got a 13-inch screen, of course, so you've got to be happy with a 13-inch screen, and it doesn't have a backlit keyboard. So if you can live with those limitations, you can get away with the new MacBook Neo, but it's not perfect for DJing. If it were me, I would certainly spend more and get a MacBook Air, get that extra port, get the backlit keyboard, because I think they're worth it. But hey, we've all got different budgets, right? Our next topic is humanizing digital libraries. So this is something that always comes up with kind of our core audience here at Digital DJ Tips at the DJ School, which is DJs who've been doing this for a long time, but are getting comfortable with digital DJing, modern DJing, the way it's done today, because they've always done it with records, with CDs, maybe just about managed USB drives and stuff, but ultimately they are from an analog world, a world where music existed in a physical format. And digital libraries, of course, couldn't be more different. They're literally bits and bytes on a hard drive. And so how do we humanize them? How do we get that kind of connection with our music that is so important for DJs? The interesting thing about this question is it really is the generation of DJs that grew up with physical music who have this issue. There's DJs I know who didn't, who've got no problem at all with the way music is now, the way it's in lists, the way it's digital, the way that it's literally looks like a spreadsheet when you're browsing through it. It's just that for some people, there is a connection with things about the music that you just don't get when they're not physical. And so while we can't put that back into a digital library, we can get to a point where the bonuses, the stuff you get that you could never have with physical music in a digital library, right? You carry it all with you. You can have multiple copies of it all over the place in different playlists and so on. And you can remix it. You can do stuff with it you could never do playing a record, like loop parts of it. And, you know, I could go on forever. Digital music is amazing. But the stuff you gain can the stuff you lose in order to get that can kind of be offset by some of the things we're going to talk about now. These are things that some of our students find useful. It helps them to understand and to ultimately find the music they're looking for better and feel like their music is something that they covet and they own and it's valuable to them again. So I'm going to talk you through 7 points now that will help you if you're struggling with loving your digital music. I don't love it. I don't love it like I love my album collection. It's not the same as it used to be. Okay, let's get going then. So number one, this is it's not glamorous, but trust me, it will make you feel differently about your music from the off. As soon as you've got a digital music collection, know where it is on your computer and back it up. Put it on a physical drive you can hold. Get every piece of digital music that's important to you and copy it onto that drive and unplug it and hold it. Stick a nice sticker on the front. Stick a digital DJ Tips logo on the front if you want. Stick something that matters to you on the front. Print it out, colour it in, make that your collection. That's your new record box. As long as you put that in the top of your wardrobe under your winter sweater, you have not lost your music if your computer explodes. It's so important to back it up, because if you're not sure it's going to be there tomorrow, your subconscious lizard mind is not going to really own that music. Back it up. And by the way, while you're there, back it up to the cloud as well. Use Dropbox or whatever. Have another copy. One copy on your computer, one in the top of your wardrobe, and one away from your home entirely. You do that and you're immediately going to feel like you own it more. Trust me, it's the first step. The second step is to add music to your digital collection as mindfully as you would have added it to your record collection. In other words, you know, the reason that people send spam emails is it doesn't cost anything to send emails, right? So you get these people sending out 10 million emails because it doesn't cost anything. Now, if emails cost £1 or $1 or €1 each, then spam would stop instantly. And with digital music, it's the same. It's almost like there's no real cost to acquiring it because people find ways of getting as much as they want and not paying anything for it. But if you are in that mindset, then you're not actually going to feel any value or ownership over the music you do have. So get your music from respectable sources. Add it carefully. We talk a lot here at Digital DJ Tips about what stages to go through in order to discover and shortlist and buy and then look after your music. And this is what this is all about. If you add tracks to your collection as if you were going and buying records in a record store, and you look after that collection, you prune it, you take music out that you don't play anymore and say, look, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to take it to the record store and sell it and buy some more. You know, that kind of vibe. Then the records you do have, the music you do have is going to be genuinely something that you cover and that you treasure. Think of your DJ music more as tools in a toolbox, right? A carpenter or a plumber does not carry around every tool that's ever been invented in the world. They don't collect tools. They get the ones they need for the job they're doing. Now, you might be a record collector, but my advice is use Spotify. Use Spotify for all those albums, or go and buy the physical records and stick them all in one room. But when it comes to DJing, have a pile of just the music you want in your digital collection. Prune it, look after it, be careful with it. That way you'll find what you want quicker, but you'll also, in order to keep that record, I keep saying record because I'm old school, but to keep that digital music collection relevant to you and in front of mind, this pruning, this looking after it, this organising, this sorting is what's going to do that, and it's going to make you feel like it's yours. So number 3, this really helps people who are more visual than who are, readers. Just add artwork. So most DJ software will let you put a view on which shows you the artwork properly for all your tracks. And go to Google Images and find the artwork that matters to you. So if you're rebuilding a collection in digital that you once owned analog, don't just use the artwork that came with it when you bought the digital version. Go and find the real artwork. Just go to Google Images and type in the track you want and type cover. When you find the one you want, just drag it onto the record in your collection, and it will appear there. And now that looks like the record that you once owned. I think artwork is something you either like or don't. I don't use it. I did at first, but I don't use it anymore. But some people find it really, really helpful. So add artwork to your music, but add the stuff you know, especially if you've got music from a compilation album, right? Let's say you used to own a 12-inch of New Order's Blue Monday, and then you buy, now that's what I call the 1980s dance 12 inches. And their artwork is on Blue Monday. Well, look, go get that old remember the Blue Monday floppy disk? It was a black cover with the yellow with the different colours down the side for the old-fashioned floppy disks. Go grab that, drag that on. Now it's your record again, right? So add artwork. So another one that's come up recently, which I love, is use emojis. Now you can hack emojis, right? If your keyboard will let you type emojis. Normally you can put them into your library, but Serato has actually made them a thing where in the rating column you can choose what you use. So you don't have to use stars, you can use emojis. You could use saxophones or singers or microphones or X's. I'm sure you can think of when emojis would make sense for you. You could have an emoji for explicit music. You could have an emoji for vocals, have one for instrumentals. You could have one for bangers, kind of that explosion for the ones that you just know are going to do the job whenever you play them. But find a way to use emojis. There's no right or wrong here. Just use them where they make sense to you. But again, they can just make tracks pop out of your collection for you and make it real. And along the same lines, a lot of DJ software will let you apply color to a track. So if you're, again, someone who thinks kind of like in colours rather than in text, then you could have all your moody tracks in one color, or your uplifting ones in another, or your vocal ones in another, and so on. And then when you load them to the decks, they're actually in that color, and it's quite nice. So play about with the color features as well. Now, in the old days when we had records, one of the things we loved doing, of course, was building a set, right? We'd get a box, we'd go through a whole collection, we'd pull records out, and we'd follow the vibe, and we'd build it like a collection that meant something to us. Maybe to play a DJ set, maybe to record a mixtape, or maybe just because we were in the mood for listening to that kind of music tonight, right? And we'd be drawing mental connections between tracks in different parts of our collection. You can do that so easily with digital that if you're not doing it, then you should be. And the way you do it is by using the playlists or crates feature. Playlists or crates, or whatever your DJ software calls them, are the user built sets of music which are separate from the library. You should never DJ out of your main library, right? Your main library could be 50 tracks, it could be 50,000 tracks, but your library will never be a nice place to DJ from. The main reason being that it's, well, two reasons. One, it's got all your music in, and you should never DJ from all your music. And two, you can't drag and drop them into any old order. Just in the same way that if you've got your music and you own 50,000 records and you've got them all on the wall, right, you'd need a couple of rooms, wouldn't you? On shelves, you certainly wouldn't want to rearrange the order, right? They're in an order, whether you've got them in catalogue order or alphabetical order or genres or whatever. So that's set, and it's the same in the library in your DJ software. Yes, you can organize it alphabetically or by when you added the tracks and so on, but you can't organize it creatively. As soon as you take, say, 20 songs and put them into a playlist, you can move them around. Now you're packing a crate like an old-fashioned DJ crate, where you've got the ones at the front that you want to play first and the ones at the back you want to play later. So you might not be packing a complete set, but you're certainly packing vibes and moods, and you're building a set of music that makes sense to you. And the beauty about doing this is, whether you're doing it for a gig or a mixtape, or as I say, just for fun, the beauty about doing this is that you have never taken that track out of your main library to do this. It's still in the main library, and that means you can do it in multiple sets. So in other words, you can have lots of copies of a track in your DJ software in lots of different playlists, which is better than obviously having one physical copy of the track. If I'm building a set with vinyl to take out and DJ tonight, but one of the songs in there is from the disco playlist that I'm trying to make for a mixtape I'm trying to do, I've got to take it out of the disco playlist and put it in tonight's set. You don't have to do that with digital music if you're using crates and playlists. So definitely use crates and playlists. Now, if you did DJ on vinyl back in the day, you'll know that when you were DJing, you would quickly flick through your music and you'd pull up 2 or 3 songs or 5 songs that you wanted to play in the next 10, 15 minutes, right? And then you knew you wouldn't have to go through your collection again for another 20 minutes to find the next song to play, because you've already chosen 4 or 5. That's the mood you're in. You can do that with all DJ software and most standalone stuff as well, by preparing your music or putting it into a temporary window, or putting it into a playlist that is only going to work until you play those songs, and then they disappear from it. Whatever it's called in your software or hardware, using that prepare window or that prepare feature is a really good idea. As you're DJing, just flick through the tracks you've chosen for that set and click on a few of them, and it will pull them out halfway from the crate by putting them into a separate little playlist. Now you can play from that playlist. Now you can play from that mini set for a little while. Now you're really feeling like the collection's yours, because you're finding the tracks you want quickly and you're treating it in the same way you would an analog collection. And the final tip, and I give this every time we talk about digital music, it's the most powerful one of all. Do not turn up at a gig having not packed a crate. Packing a crate, we've already talked about, is basically taking about twice the amount of music you're really going to play. So if you play 20 tracks in an hour and you're playing for 2 hours, that's 20 tracks times 2, which is 40. Twice the amount of music, that's 80, right? So you're going to pack a playlist or a crate in your DJ software of 80 tracks, and you're going to think very hard about them. What you want to play, what you'd like to play if the crowd are up for it, what you're going to play if they're not up for anything, so a plan B. What about a plan C? And then you look at the crate you've packed. Has it got enough vocals? Has it got enough instrumentals? Enough slow stuff? Enough fast stuff? Enough stuff people know? Enough stuff people don't know? A few left field tracks you want to try, because if you don't, then you're going to go home feeling like you were a bit of a jukebox. You know, has it got enough real floor fillers for if it goes a bit wrong? What are you going to end with? Have you been asked for anything? Are there anything you know you're going to be requested? You know, so you're going to have a look hard at this set. If you do that for every gig you play, you are in a way pre-reading the crowd. So people talk about reading the crowd, but you can pre-read the crowd by knowing what they're likely to want, by doing your research, and by packing a set accordingly. Now, of course, it's digital music. You don't have to stick to that set. You've got all the rest of your music off there in your library as well. But how good to have a set of music that you're probably going to play from. And even if you do deviate from it, you're going to come straight back to it. Just gives you this feeling of calm. It gives you this feeling of having tamed your digital music library. So we just talked there about ways of making sure your digital music is something that you can love just in the same way, or at least in a way that's approaching how you love physical music, records and CDs, but bringing you all the benefits of digital music. And look, there's no putting all this back in the bag. This has happened now. So DJs who are used to the old way are going to have to find ways of living with it in order to get all the benefits. And hopefully I've shared a few of those with you now. And that's where we're going to leave it for this time. If you've enjoyed this, please do give us a nice 5-star rating and maybe some nice words on your podcast platform of choice, or in the comments if you're watching it on YouTube. Remember, we are the world's leading DJ school. If you'd like to learn to DJ with us, check out our complete DJ course. And if you'd like a DJ education for life with all the courses we do and much more, check out our All Access Pass. You'll find out more on those things and everything else we do over at digitaldjtips.com. Meanwhile, though, from me, Phil, until next time, get good, get out there and make the moments. Bye for now.